Hey, let's
So I went to
go.
a celebration of life yesterday for a gentleman named Frank Canales, a guy that we used to all call Grandpa.
Mhm.
Grandpa was a guy that worked whenever I started at Pioneer. He was on the security staff, and
Oh,
I, I'm not sure, but he had to be in his 80s already, and still working and still cruising around, and lively as you can even
yeah.
imagine a guy at 80 years old working on a campus, a school campus, and and everybody called him Grandpa, and he didn't have to do much to get people to do
Yeah.
what he wanted them to do. It was out of respect, and his family all went to school there, and and stuff like that. So we went to the celebration of life, and it's funny, somebody I knew him. We worked together for, I'm gonna say, 7 years or so, and he came out and helped out on the football field a little bit, and just cruised around, and wanted to be part of hanging out, and and he would show up some days, and then he had other days where he went home, and
Yeah.
it was just a kind of a bonus for us to have him around, and
Mhm.
he, I think, really got a kick out of being out there, and he was a little old school, not totally. He was a softball coach in his day. They named a softball field at Cal High after him.
Oh wow.
But they told the story during the celebration. They told the story that he was got to started coaching softball, and then went to the principal, and the principal, or the athletic director, assistant principal, who was speaking, said, he came up to me and he said, "Hey," he says, "when do I get my load of brick dust?" Varsity foot baseball got a load of brick dust, and when are we gonna? So they talked him, and he talked him into getting brick dust, and and he said it was a meeting, at the board meeting, and it was he had to get things approved and all that kind of stuff, but and then he went back and got electricity to the softball field so they could put their pitching machine out, like
Right.
like those guys, and continually upgraded that thing until they ended up naming a field after him, and
That's
you
awesome.
don't, you learn things about people that you never knew, and so much about his, his prayer life, and his connection with God, and those kind of things that I wouldn't have known that he was overly involved in the church. I mean,
Mm.
he always talked about being cool and kind, and and treating people with respect, and he loved what we did with the football in terms of respect and stuff like that, and and but you find out so much about people, and it's
Yeah.
really interesting. So shout out to Grandpa, and I'm sure he's kicking back in heaven, and doing, he loved sports, and he was quite enthusiastic about his following along with the schools that he coached at and stuff like that. So it was a great experience to be there. um, I also wanted to make sure that we sent a shout out to Lovey Lopez, who did a great job on the podcast, and people are starting to really get a look at that thing, and um, I'm taking they're setting up Lovey and her coaching staff to go do softball for life, in the with the football for life and the Indian reservations, and that kind of deal, and that's happening, and that's very cool. Mike Avila, who came on with us and did a great job of talking about things, you had mentioned it a little bit, Tom, that if you don't know where to go listen to it, and what part of the 3 hours that we spend, it's tough, but for those of you who even take a few minutes to kind of just jump in somewhere, there's a lot of stories within the pods that we do, that if you just skip around,
Yeah.
you'll jump into a part of the story that is interesting,
Yeah.
because the farther we get into the podcast, nobody ever thinks they're going to talk for 2 hours,
Right.
let alone 2.5 hours, and really opening up to talk about things that are really personal, and
Yeah.
and stories that you wouldn't normally tell, and the trust that they give, that we're gonna do well with it, has been really really pretty sweet. So those things.
It feels like people get stuff off their chest a little bit. Be honest with you, like we've never had anybody like say to us, "Hey, can we cut that out? I think I overspoke, or I said something I didn't want to say." I mean, really, I mean, I can only think of one or two times where it was just a courtesy situation, but it does feel like people are getting things off their, putting things out there like you said that wouldn't normally say, but
Right.
really, really genuine feelings, and I'm glad we have that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, one of our guests confided in me later that I really need to think a little bit more about my impact on things,
Mm,
because and I think a lot of the most of the people we bring on, their stories are very impactful, and have some, something that comes up that you just go, wow, that's really an incredible perseverance, or
yeah,
wow, how'd you deal with that? That what a a tough situation in their lives,
yeah,
and families and all that kind of stuff. But they tend to be really honest about things,
mm,
and it's really, I've made the podcast really super interesting to me. I go back and listen to them, and I forget what we talked about for 2.5 hours, and you go on and you go, yeah, that's right. And people disclose things, but I think the more powerful the stories, the more humble the people are, and
yes,
they wouldn't normally tell those things. So I think we've found an opportunity to get really humble, kind, and courageous people to talk about themselves, which is a little abnormal for most of us. Guys like us that
yeah,
have done whatever we've done in our lives, but that athlete humbleness, is
hmm,
something that is always around, and I'm grateful for that, because I go back and listen to the podcasts and enjoy them 2 or 3 times, by
yeah.
listening to different parts, and so it's really interesting like that.
Yeah, you could do like a little bingo or a little lottery where you just kind of you scrub it and then go bing right here. Let's try this. 33 minutes, 38
Yeah,
minutes, 52 minutes. Yeah, that's pretty
yeah,
cool.
exactly.
You know, I've always been a little bit of an oversharer, and I don't know if that is something that encourages folks, but I don't know what it is about. You know, I I hesitate to say, but I think it's because we are committed to shining a light on them and their journey, and kind of like, there's been times where I personally, and you have done the same thing, where we're sort of beating this point on them 2 or 3 times and trying to get them to at least maybe even open their eyes up, or sort of accept, again, in that they're doing a great job with the humble stuff, but we want to make sure we get the sort of the coolness out of it, or the point out of it, or the learning. A lot of times it's learning, isn't it? Like, you know what can we learn from this person, and sometimes it takes a minute to get them to spit it out. I often think that when I'm editing that we should like flip the thing backwards, and start in the second hour and then end in the first hour, but
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true, and
yeah,
I think that people that aren't used to sharing the inner details of their lives,
yeah,
again, it takes a little bit of time to trust. Even though we have somewhat of a relationship with a lot of the
yeah,
people that we talk to, there's a trust factor that I'm gonna talk about. And maybe we lull them into a false sense of security where they feel comfortable, but
yeah,
it's true. There's a certain aspect of I guess sharing our gifts and sharing our stories of perseverance, of going through all the things that we go through, that you just wouldn't tell the in the average party, sipping a glass of wine, or
right,
having a beer. You wouldn't tell those stories. So we're pretty lucky to have that. I laughed because I go back to cousin Sal's deal, and it literally, you could just scroll it and punch it and get some kind of crazy story out of him. He's just
yeah,
wacky and goofy and stuff, but he's to have somebody that had those kind of dates. He's got that photographic memory,
yeah,
which again, I don't. You think back through. I love reading about history, where you go back through and you go, Thomas Edison, and he was a weirdo, and
yeah,
or Benjamin Franklin, he had all these foibles and this,
yeah,
these things that, and it's just about anybody that has, I was talking the other day, to somebody. I think we've talked about it and touched on it too. I think you have alluded to the fact that sometimes along with that brilliance comes a lot of inner anguish and
yeah,
inner voices and things that and just the amount of people that that die early, that are really brilliant, amazing people that have these struggles in life, and you just wonder, do I have to have the torment to go along with the gifts that you get, and it's interesting to hear people that you'd go, oh yeah, they seem pretty put together and they seem all but then you delve into their lives and they're just like us, or they're just like the next guy. And that seems to be what I think is alluring to listening to the podcast, is because it's neat to hear stories of triumph and stories of excitement, but that they suffered and struggled and went through some of the same things the rest of us have gone through is really eye-opening and kind of comforting in some way.
Yeah. I mean, I know that, my mom, I read a lot, and I think my mom reads probably twice as much as I do. And, so I'll feed, I feed her autobiographies and stuff. And, there's times where gets bent out of shape. It's, that saying where you don't want to meet your heroes, right? And, my mom has read some books in the last 2 years and that I had gotten her. I was all excited. And, wow, that's Bob Dylan. Wow, I didn't like that anymore. I don't know if I like that guy. I mean, and it's a real challenge, because, again, I'm sold on the deal. I think I bring it up way too much, but I'm sold on this idea that, that there has to be some sort of, there has to be
struggle.
There has to be some push.
Pain.
Yeah, and and again, it's a weird thing because looking back, you can say, well, that didn't feel good at the time, but it was certainly helpful. Just in my own personal life and in your personal life, and and I just try to preach that to the kids all the time. It's okay. You're gonna get up, and the sun's gonna come out, and if it could lead to greatness. Again, nobody wants to see Steve Jobs' movie because he acts like a prick, but we all appreciate, and life is microscopically better because of that guy. And right. Henry Ford, we all, oh gosh, this and that, but he might have been a racist, or Walt Disney, might have been anti-Semite. Well, gosh, we're all human. I can only imagine what my, I'm sure I have a list of things that, I annoy people with or something, I all I can do is just take responsibility for it and really just choose to highlight the people, and choose to highlight the good stuff. And you know what, if people want to share those things, my big thing is the parenting, Chuck. Like, I'm a teacher, you work in the schools, like it's 100% selfish to make better parents. Because that means I get better kids in 10 years,
right, for sure.
And that's always been my little joke. But like, I don't know. I mean, I treated my boys very, very, strict, and I put them in situations, and I just had a conversation with my son the other day. He got his first genuine Sanrail, this big car. This thing's a monster, right? This thing's a monster.
Cheers to Kyle. That
I know, right?
Cool, man. Yeah.
Big smile on his face. I haven't seen that in a minute. And he was expressing to me, he's like, wow, it's going to take me a while to learn how to drive this thing. I'm like, nah, you're good. You're good. And I remember, when he was 5 years old, I would have my little Wednesday visitations, and I would go down, I'd have an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I'd go down to Huntington Beach, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to take you back home. So we did a lot of park stuff and all that. And I remember watching him climb to the top of the jungle gym, 5 years old. And he would look over his shoulder, and I'd say, go, let's go. You get up there, and I just remember like, well, he might fall down. I don't know. He could break his arm or, worse. And nope, he just went right up there because I was confident in him, and putting him in those situations is maybe not what everyone would do. I know that's a silly example, but, for me, watching him on the jungle gym, I had anxiety. I was like, oh, shit, I hope he's a good athlete. I hope he doesn't get scared. And if he got scared, right, I would go over there, and take him down or whatever. But I mean, he was up there,
Yeah.
One of those old school jungle gyms like we had when we were growing up. And your thing fell down, Chuck.
It did.
Yeah. So anyhow, I kind of, that was always been my mentality is, a little bit of pressure and a little bit of heat creates that diamond, and but again, I don't see that all the time. The feedback that I get from society is, how many times have we said, "Gosh, we did that. I would never let my kid do that," and we're not so bad. So I don't know how that all. I don't know how you balance the ledger on experience and
Right.
learning and things like that. And
Well, and I think that's probably the whole trip
yeah,
to this life, is you don't know what the balance is, and you do your best, and and things go well and things not go not so well at times, and you have the ups and downs of it all. But
right,
there is a core theme to the people that we talk to,
right,
that that kind of accentuates the fact that, yeah, it doesn't matter who you are and where you
hmm
come from and how you grow up. You have opportunities for success, and you have these maybe bitter failures,
yeah,
and it is what makes up a lifetime. And that was one of the things that you look at it in a celebration of life, like I went to for Grandpa Frank Canales. There was all kinds of stories of the ups and downs and struggles, but there was this theme of coaching and happiness that came along with the coaching and the inspiring others, and
yeah,
that it wasn't, none of the inspiring part seems to be singular. It
yeah,
always has an aspect of teaching or coaching or connecting
mm,
or learning from a mentor. There's always that. I mean, we don't go the road alone, and
right,
that's, to me, that is what makes it also spectacular, is because if you grew up without a father, there's failures and successes stories. If you grew up without a mother, there's
right,
failure and success stories. If you grew up in poverty, or you grew up rich, there's all the success and failure stories of every possible outcome of opportunity in life. And you just, it makes everybody have the same opportunity, that you can do it. You can
right,
find a way to be happy. You can find a way to impact the world.
yeah,
There's, I mean, there's a lot going on. You're in school after the COVID, and how do you make an impact? And we're dealing with a lot of behavioral issues, and things that we had a really hard week, in 2 weeks, in the last couple of weeks, with 2 years, two classes of kids
that's right,
who have never been on campus.
yes,
So we're trying to get them, and again, I always explain it like this: we've got 1,200 students, and we have a special situation because with 1,200 students, they're manageable, and you can impact. Like, I know almost everybody on campus,
hmm
or at least know their faces.
recognize their face, yeah,
Yeah, and can say, "Hey, how are you?" And
yeah,
they know who I am, and that kind of thing. Um, but there's a lot of kids who have had no structure for
mm,
how long, a year and a half, where they got up. And I actually confronted a kid the other day, that I said, "What have you been doing over the pandemic? What did you do? Did you get up and study? Did you go get on Zoom? Did you have
right,
any kind of?" And he just kind of blanked me until I got to the sentence where I said, "Did you have any kind of structure? Did your parents or your grandparents give you any kind of structure?"
right,
And he looked up and he said, "I had absolutely no structure. I did whatever I wanted to do. I got up in the morning and I left the house, and I didn't come back till the end of the day. And I rarely got on Zoom, and I didn't do very well in school.
hmm
And now you're screaming and yelling and telling me, I got to do this, I got to do
yeah,
that, and the other thing." And it was the first moment that he broke character and stopped being tough guy,
right,
or bitter guy, or whatever you want to call him, and showed some human, response. And it was true over the course of 2 weeks, where we really, we're getting TikToks where they're
yeah,
destroying bathrooms and ripping stuff off the wall. And so we just put the hammer down across campus, and made it really hard for anybody to do anything.
right,
Passes, and go back to class unless you have a pass. If you don't have a
oh
pass,
man,
go, give me the pass. And they hated it for the first few days. And I swear, Tom, after 2 days, they just went, "Okay, if that's what this is all about, then they got a pass," and they
hmm
came. and it limited their movements, and it limited their wandering around and
Right.
stuff like that. And again, in a smaller school like ours, we have the ability kind of to be a little more in control. But
Hmm.
it just, the point was is that it went to the fact that it took us 2 weeks of hammering them, and they all the message was really clear. This is a different place. When you walk through those gates, there is no bullying, there is no fighting, there is no being a jerk, there is
Mm.
no screaming and yelling and
Right.
talking back to staff. We have conversations. As soon
Yes.
as you're being disrespected, then all the gloves are off, and you can handle your business.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time, a lot of years teaching after college hospital, and being involved in that situation, teaching assertion training, how to be heard.
Mm.
And how many times do you ever win a battle with a teacher and get to that point where I won? You don't. You lose 99.9% of the time. You lose, no matter right, wrong, or indifferent.
Hmm.
But are you willing to be heard? Are you willing to do what you have to do? Are you willing to stay after class and go, can I speak to you one-on-one?
Mm.
Can I talk to you where we can talk personally, and I can be upset, but I'm not embarrassing a teacher in front, or putting the teacher on
Mm.
blast in front of people, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So we really hammered that hard. And I'll tell you what, boy, kids have changed their attitude. Even the rough kids, even the kids that are little gangsters, they
Yeah.
want to, they're trying to get over and do their little deals on campus and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They've stopped. And I think there's such an aspect of what we're talking about here on the podcast, and those kind of kids, that you have to spend extra time, and you have to teach them behavioral modification,
Yeah.
because that might be the opportunity for them to tell their story down the road, where somebody interacted with them in a way that changed their beliefs, and vented, or transmuted their anger, and got past that to where you could go, oh yeah, I can do that. I can be a better person.
Yeah.
And it's such a neat situation, even though it's a little bit of a pain in the ass to deal with these kids. But I think, again, some of these kids are the ones, like you said it a million times. There's, how does it go? The A students are what? The B students,
Doctors, B
you
students are
know,
lawyers, and C students are millionaires.
a millionaires. I mean, those kids, those goofball kids. If you just spend a little time with them,
Yeah.
and don't take it personally in an ego situation, which is the biggest deal breaker for teachers and coaches in the world. I think,
100%.
if I can take my ego out of it, and they can go, wow, he won't fight with me. He won't get involved in this anger that I want to spew all over the place. And it's so I'm hopeful that it all kind of connects somewhere, along the line. We do a better job of raising better kids that become better parents, that are more hopeful.
Yeah. Two things that I think of, what you made me think about. Number one, we talked to Larry De La Rosa a long time ago. I think he was our fourth one, and he spoke about the Latino culture, and not, we were speaking about music and finding music, as but it was because maybe the parental thing was broken down, and they weren't talking to their dads. They didn't have those conversations with their dads, and things like that. I mean, very vague. And then I work in a situation where I meet a lot of kids that are super rich, and their parents are, particularly their dads, are putting in extraordinary hours at work, or trying to run the business or whatever. And there's a breakdown there, and so we don't really know. And I was talking to Kyle about one of his friends, and the things that were going on with his father and stuff like that. And Kyle just finally just said, well, nobody talks like we talk. This is unusual. I'm like, really? I mean, I go, do you want it another way? Is it wrong? And he's like, sometimes it sucks, because you say things that are blunt, or you say things I don't want to hear, and sometimes it's great. And I never thought of it that way. I just, being for the longest time, being a weekend dad, I was always trying to sort of wedge in a week's worth of learning and a week's worth of life lessons in 48 hours or whatever I had Kyle. And thank goodness later on he moved in. He was stayed with me all the time. But I thought that was interesting, and kids don't know. I challenge them. I say, look, if you can talk to me in class. If you can come up to me, I'm a giant guy. I'm 300 pounds. I got, sometimes I have a beard. Sometimes I'm wearing glasses. And I said, if you can deal with me, you can deal with anybody. And they kind of look at me, okay, I'm going to try. So the biggest thing I think with teachers, and I can speak to this, is these people have invested their lives in this particular subject, and it's sort of their identity, and it's an identity that they're proud of. Oftentimes teachers are thought of in a good light, and sort of changing the world kind of thing, you don't want to be attacked for who you are. If I'm an English teacher and you don't like to read, and you say you come in every day thinking that English sucks, then you think I suck. That was kind of my advantage of being a little bit late start as a teacher. Is I wanted to be a firefighter, and I wanted to do this other stuff. That was who I wanted to be, and then I turned into a teacher. But at least I have that. Yeah, I understand. I know not everybody likes history. I know that it's boring to some people. I know they don't understand, and so and I think that works all the time. I think intention's a big thing. To me, intention is the ultimate. I think that I hurt people's feelings, and it's very rare that I try to. And then I think that I ask that of myself. Why is this person attacking me? Is it on purpose, or are they just completely unconscious of what they're doing? And I don't know. That gives me a lot of mileage. We had a coach at St. Paul, and Coach Reddy, and he was a guy that was a lot different, and he rubbed people the wrong way, and he was abrasive and nasty, and sometimes even seemed ignorant and things like that. And my grandfather used to just say, listen, man, and maybe my grandfather was just trying to salvage this investment that we made at St. Paul, and he thought, well, if this guy's going to be the coach, we got to make the best of it. But he would say stuff to me like, well, you can learn what not to do as well. You don't have to. Everything doesn't have to be peachy keen all the time. Rick Reddy is somebody that I try not to be when I'm a coach, or whatever.
Right.
But I never once did I think, and this is important, even for all my St. Paul buddies, never once did I think that he wanted to lose. Never once did I think that he was trying to mess us up. So just having that one little, agreement. I think it's called one of those 7 agreements. You read that book. Just, hey man, I know you're not trying to lose. I'm trying to sort out how you're going to make us win. And guess what? Oh, by the way, we won a lot of freaking games. That dude probably got the highest winning percentage of any St. Paul coach because he was only there for 2 years. But that made the difference for me. And other people that I know felt attacked. And they're like, oh no, he's fucking with me, or he's sabotaging me.
Right.
I'm like, bro, no. And so I think that intention is very important. I think
this.
Yeah, I think I could be a real bad dude, and I could come off super bad, but I can't remember the last time where I went after somebody. And just to be honest, just to be clear, when I'm coaching, I don't have that coach versus coach thing. Like, I don't look across the field and after a touchdown, or look across the field. That's completely irrelevant to me. That's how I do it. I've got plenty to worry about, and sort of competing with that other guy is not and I know a lot of coaches thrive on that. They're beating the guy across the field or whatever. I could care less what that guy does. So
yeah.
I don't think he cares about me. What kind of attitude would I have if I thought that guy thought something like he had to be?
Well, and there are those unique situations. There are. Guys,
I guess rivals. Yeah.
There are guys that I do look across. And again, it's based completely on on that. It's like I tell the kids. There's sometimes that I am giving you parables.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily telling you things that actually are perfectly 110% right and true. Mm-hmm. They're designed to have you understand a lesson. Right. And it's the same thing, with coaching. I'm not trying to show anybody up. I'm taking a knee whenever it's the right time to take a knee and all that kind of stuff. But cross the line and be a dirty son of a bitch who's going to try and embarrass us
Right.
or has embarrassed us in the past, then there's a certain
Yeah.
amount of payback that you get. And it's almost sometimes better to think, oh God, he thinks you're going to pay him back right now, Chuck, and then you don't, and that's almost a better response.
Yeah.
And that's that was, I had that experience with the kids in that scenario that I was talking about, getting them up to speed, where they got used to me being real soft spoken and real direct and real tolerant, like I wasn't hammering him and beating him up. Well, then they start to take advantage of the fact that, well, maybe if I just go stand by him and talk to him for a few minutes, he won't care that I'm out of class. Well, so now it's that old adage, it's better to start out hard and back off than it is to start out soft and to ramp it up. Well, again, if that's the personality of the way that I do things, then I'm setting myself up for that, Well, so I've gotten to that point with a lot of the kids that want to be, wandering around in the day. And I finally got frustrated with a kid and I lit him up, and I said, you know what? I'm tired of you. You think you can come over here and stand next to me and talk to me and say, yes, sir. And then all of a sudden you can do whatever you want. I said, that's not the way it's going to work. I said, my respect for you is based solely on the fact that I respect you for no other reason than you're a young man in school. Your respect for me is based on whether or not I'm cool to you and let you do what you want. Now, when I don't let you do what you want, well, he came up to me later on. He goes, are you having a bad day?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, no. I said, you are having a bad day because I'm not going to let you do all that goofy shit that you do. And it was, again, those light bulb moments for people when they see the lesson in things and they go, oh, so again, your point of intent is really important. If they thought I was a jerk off and my ego was, gonna be just like all the other Charlie Brown people going wah, 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 then I don't think that they would make that adjustment fast enough, and good.
No, I don't feel like when I was being a teenager, it was very black and white for me. I lived in a black and white world. Servite was bad, St. Paul's good. Weight room, I have to go to the weight room, I have to go to the field, I have to have this grade point average. It wasn't really that difficult. What do you think the difference is? I mean, it was difficult, but I didn't make it more difficult than it was, or I didn't have static, or I never thought look, you told me to do something, you were my coach, and I just knew that you wanted me to, it was going to help me some way. I didn't really have to know why, I guess. I think my life was confusing enough. I didn't have to know why. Why is it some kids aren't motivated? Why would some kid want to miss out on English class or whatever to just do nothing, right? And then put the effort into sort of fooling you, even though he's not fooling you. Like, why do kids do that? Why did the kids not go on Zoom? Why didn't the kids not? Like, I thought about class. I'm like, well, gee, I might learn something today that's going to help me in the future, maybe, but there's a chance, do you buy lottery tickets, that kind of thing. Like, the other choice is to do nothing, and that's a sure thing, not going to help you for sure. That's 100% no good. So if you have a 50-50 and you have 100% shitty, like, it baffles me why kids don't just, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I mean, there's nothing that they can do to not be at school and do it without being in trouble, and do it without not having the cops come to your house or Chuck Willig show up and wake you up in the morning. Like, I don't understand. This is a what do you call it? This is not a variable. This is a fact. These are the things that are gonna help you survive. These are the things that you're gonna have to accomplish. You don't have to play football. You don't have to do that, but you got to go to school. You got to show up. You got to pay attention. Right. Or why that was something that I have a hard time with when I talk to kids. I'm like, well, it's due, right? Like, what's the alternative? You got to go. You have to show up.
Yeah, I think, you ready for my theory?
Please.
Okay.
I need a theory because I'm like,
well, my theory is this: there's two things that impact an adolescent kid: fear and opportunity. So if I'm afraid that I can't be cool in an educational environment where I'm going to be looked at like I am not so smart, or I don't know what I'm doing, or I didn't do my homework, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm afraid. That's fear. Opportunity is, you mean I can stay home? You mean they'll let me wander around and not go to class?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think it's much more than that. You know,
Mm.
I think that if I'm afraid that you know, again, and you know, you can add in all the ADD concepts of you know, kids being able to sit still,
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
think is absolutely true. Because
It's a big
I
deal.
can look
Yeah.
at my watch and go, okay, we're halfway through the block scheduled day, you know,
Go.
period. Here they come. You know, everybody's got to go out and walk around and go to the
Yeah.
restroom and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I think that when you can show kids, give kids an opportunity to, in front of their peers, to be successful out loud,
Mm-hmm.
if you pardon the pun, then that will turn them on enough to keep them in that seat a little longer.
Yeah.
And I think good teachers do that. You know, they find ways to do that. Or I'll walk in and stand in the class, and I do this all the time. I walk in and stand in the class, and you'll see Johnny on his phone, and
Oh
you
yeah.
know you're not supposed to use your phone in class, and he knows that, and everybody knows that. But that teacher, that kid's quiet, and they don't want to bother. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
So
Right.
you give him the opportunity. Well, what's he going to choose? Don't bother me and stay on my phone. That's the best of both worlds to me. I have the
Yeah.
opportunity. I'm not afraid of being called on. I'm not afraid of being picked on. I'm not afraid of you trying to tell me what to do. You know, and I think that that's the biggest factor. You know, I don't think it's this long and drawn out premeditated shit that these kids think about.
Mm.
I think that they're looking for the simplest straight line to get what they want,
Mm.
and not feeling, again, the longer I stay out of class over a period of a week, the farther away from understanding the lesson I am, the
Right.
more afraid I am that I'm going to get called on.
Mm.
You know, so I'm going to do everything I can to stay out of the limelight and keep a low profile until I can get out of there, and I'm not going to get called on, because I know I'm, you know, and what is the one thing that kids don't want to look like? They don't want to look dumb. They
Yeah.
don't want to look stupid. They don't want kids to laugh at them. You know, especially the tough kids, or the kids that have made a street kind of
Mm-hmm.
life for themselves, you know, and you know, we had a kid that said, I said, you know, I was talking to him about that, you know, your freedom and your
Mm.
discipline and stuff over the course of the pandemic. He goes, I don't have parents. He goes, I have a grandma.
Oh yeah.
You know, she's too old to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
She tries, and I tell her I love her, and then she goes,
Yeah.
okay, you can
And she's
go.
wore out. Yeah. The whole bit.
Yeah. And, you know, and so again, opportunity. The kid has an opportunity to go out and run around. So he does that, and that's safe for him. And he can be in the environment where he gets the feedback that makes him feel better about himself. You know, I mean, the
Yeah.
same thing about the kid who acts like a fool, but kids laugh.
Yeah.
So that's the feedback that he gets. So it eliminates the fear of being ostracized or laughed at or excluded or whatever. You know, and I think when you can create an opportunity for somebody to feel the success and the love, they're way more likely. You know, a kid wanted to kill me for confronting him, and I looked at him and I said, I'm a grown ass man. I am not going to argue with you. I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Do you understand that I care about you enough to go, I'm not going to fight with you.
Right.
I don't need to win this battle.
Yeah.
I need you to understand. I got to go home and feed my family and get paid.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to be as respectful and direct as I can. Do I ever disrespect you? No, sir.
Oh, sure.
Well, as soon as he says no, sir, I know we're going somewhere, because, you know, that's him. Without him giving in, he's given a little bit of that respect back, you know. And again, I think it's hard. Teachers have the hardest job in the world, because identifying each individual personality of 30 kids in a class, and then teaching to their strengths and making their self-esteem better. Boy, I'll tell you what, that's you should be paid, you know, 1.6 million dollars in your third year. You know what I mean?
I
I
think
mean,
I think I say it once well, for sure once a month, maybe even once every 2 weeks. I say that. I'll ask them, what do you think I'm making you do this for? Why do you think, like, do you think I'm just want you to be quiet, or I want you to just fall in line? No, I could care less about that. You know, If you have a question of why I'm giving you this dumb assignment, then ask me, because if I didn't tell you that, I'm missing the boat. We used to, at the last school I worked at, we used to have to write the thing on the board. This is why we're doing it. And students will be able to do this. It was very, very disciplined like that. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that we need to have a public service announcement right now, because I'm listening to you with the theory, and I'm going, oh, this is why sports are so important, because you get that feedback on a very short term basis. And even football is the longest, right? Football is the
Right.
week long. You got to practice for a week and invest in a week. In baseball, it's twice a week, and basketball, 2 or 3 times a week. But that, I feel like I was constantly reverse engineering my success. Like I am afraid, to your point, I'm afraid to be humiliated. And oh, by the way, I'm a defensive back. So everyone's going to see me miss a tackle, or everyone's going to see me get burned. They're not going to see the pass rush and all that shit.
Right.
So I hate going to the weight room, but you're saying that that's going to help me, that I'm going to do it. Like I never did curls at St. Paul. Curls were useless. That was not what we did at St. Paul. We weren't curls for the girls at all. Guns for the beach or whatever. We did other things that allowed us to hit and allowed us to, bludgeon people and things like that. And it wasn't curls. Curls were for looking good. They still don't have big arms, but that's the only reason that I went into the weight room. Truly, I don't go in the weight room now. That was the reason. And when the doctor says you need to go in the weight room or you're going to die, then I'm going to go in the weight room probably. And I probably need to go in the weight room. But running on the track was my least favorite thing. And getting, and the way you guys did with the bleachers, where there was an intention to the bleachers, like, okay, we're going to run this one for Loyola, and we're going to run this one for Santa Monica, and we're going to run this one for Bosco. That resonated with me. I was like, okay, all right, I am going to run this one. Instead of sort of introspective, looking inside of myself and feeling my pain, I knew that it was going to be exponentially worse. And I would say the same thing about baseball or softball. Like, you're going to be the one that has to stand in the batter's box. You're going to strike out with bases loaded. You're going to do that. So just get on the tee, or just take extra BP, or just run your pulls, or whatever you have to do. And I feel it's interesting, because I feel like that's what's missing with some of these folks. They don't have a sport, or they don't have drama, or they just don't participate in things, and it shows. My cousins, my second cousins, I don't know them very well, but they went to Mater Dei. They were Orange County, and they went to Mater Dei, and I actually played against one in football. And but one of the things that they told me at a family get together was that at Mater Dei, you have to sign a contract as a student that you will participate in one or more extracurricular activities per semester. You do not go home at 2:30. Whatever that may be. It could be the yearbook. It could be the dance committee. It could be the dance team. It could be the football. Blah, 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 blah. There is no going home. I'm like, whoa, that is powerful. Because looking back, that's what saved me from nonsense. Even if I wanted to be a jackass, I was pretty wore out by the time I got home. With all
Right.
sports at St. Paul, fitness was never an issue at St. Paul. Every single sport we were fit, including baseball and these other, sort of slow games. I don't know, man. That seems like a decent answer to the question. I just didn't really realize it until we started talking. But I was like, I didn't want to be humiliated under the lights. So
Yeah.
even when I was a freshman, I thought, okay, Thursday is one thing, people trickling into the stadium, but Friday night, that's a year away or 2 years.
Right. Right. Well, and somebody gave you the opportunity to find out, here's the way to circumvent the fear.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't normally do that, but
Yeah.
and I think, that the bigger picture is something that you don't get on a daily basis if you're going home and not
Right.
hearing it from your parents.
Right.
The bigger picture is, it's about survival. And how many kids, especially, you get the depictions on TV or whatever. They come home, they go in the room, they slam the door, they put their headphones on, and they zone out.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk. They're teenage angst and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's happens, but that's coming from situations where they're not having that communication. There's not a bigger picture thing. Either the family unit is the bigger picture or the team is the bigger picture. There's something bigger than me that demands my attention and focus. And that's the beauty of sports. And I think what you're kind of talking about is that I have a bigger responsibility than just me and my skateboard, and I have to think about, oh gosh, well, this is what I want to do, but this is, we have a situation that the transition of our coaches in football, and we've got a good coach. He's coached at Pioneer before. He's been a teacher there for 25 years. He's a fantastic individual and role model and all those kind of things. They're struggling with that commitment level because of the year and a half of the pandemic and the struggle with the coach coming and leaving after 1 year.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching kids walk out the door at the end of the day. I'm like, we're not going to practice. I've got to watch my little brother. I've got to go to the dentist. I've got 9,000 reasons. And darn well that those are things that as the coach spends another year, that you'll wean those kids off of those excuses, because they'll realize that the team is more important than the individual, and my participation is hurting my friends. Well, right now there's that separation. In some programs that have had large success year to year, you can kind of maintain that rather than reteach it. We're in the reteaching, rebuilding mode where kids don't understand that. So to your point, I think that bigger picture and having an opportunity to think outside of myself is a great way to get kids to grow into a little bit more empathetic human beings. I mean, it's as simple as that. Let me think about something than myself. And if I don't have shit and I go home and there's no food, and I got to go ride my skateboard over and buy the same freaking Taco Bell or chicken for, 99 cents a, dollar meal shit every single day. Who the hell, why am I thinking about somebody else?
Yeah.
Unless somebody gives me a reason to. And that's why, that's the beauty of seeing the great teachers that there are, and, listening to you talk about your interaction with your kids in class. Those kids are getting a firsthand life lesson along with the book lessons that are being taught. And that's, again, you need a raise 1.9 this year instead, for what you do, and for the people and the teachers out there that I know that listen to this, God bless you. And I know what you go through to make a little bit more involvement of students that need a little bit more involvement. And it's quite a tribute to the people who make that happen, because you can see the production that or what it produces.
Well, and then we have such a fractured society, it seems, today. And somebody told me this week that it was such a small minority. Maybe it was Kyle. He said something about Gavin Newsom recall and how it got smashed, and like it didn't feel that way. Like it didn't, when it was happening. It felt like it could go either way. Like, oh my God, we might lose Gavin. Like, I don't even know if I like Gavin Newsom, but geez, I mean, this is gonna change democracy. And he was like, oh well, yeah, that wasn't even close. And you have that feeling, and people are so interested in separating instead of coming together. I think that's interesting. And is that connected to the divorce rate at 50%? The people are not willing to stay together. They want to separate. And when I talk about Colleen or whatever, it's always, I always say there's a couple choices and none of them are divorce. Like that's not even on the test. Like that's not even one of you. It's not all of the above. Like you don't even get that choice. You can eat shit. You can apologize. You can stand your ground, but it's not we don't. I feel like you talk about it and then it becomes more real. And um, why don't the kids they just can't have that vision? It's too far away, I guess. Huh? It's because whatever they're learning in high school is going to make them who they are at 30. That's only 15 more years. Like but that's double their life.
Right.
Maybe it's too hard to figure out.
It's so far off in the distance, and that's why I say, when people say, "Oh, kids are so different these days," and I just go, "It's not true. It's not true.
Yeah.
We have become old enough to recognize that kids are different than we are now.
Right.
Not that kids are different. Kids are still going through the same. I mean, when you're a baby, if you're fed and changed, your life is grand. You get your needs met on that level, and each year that you get older, your level of needs changes,
right?
And so there becomes that next one more, and then there's 5, and then there's 8 things that you need, and then there's the things that you want, that you think you need, and you express yourself on that level. I want the PlayStation, and whatever that is. I mean, it multiplies and becomes more complex. So by the time we get to adult, let's say, you get to where you have children of your own, your life becomes so complex, and you see the child's life as so simple,
right?
But in terms of what their scope of knowledge is, their life is just as complicated, if not more complicated, than yours is, right? Because they don't have the same access to the reasoning of how to get their needs met. And that's why I say
they don't even have a fully developed brain yet.
And so it seems so hard and complicated for an adolescent kid, because now you're getting this new input that is saying you need this and you want this, and what is that feeling? Why do I feel that way?
Right.
Why does that girl make me nervous, and why does that boy make me afraid? And all these things are happening in the course of your growing up that you're adding to, and by the time you started to adapt to learning those things as an adult, I think it becomes a little easier to look at other people and go, "Oh, your life is easy. You shouldn't have that," And I think the key, my biggest success in coaching, I think at some point is perception is reality. Mm-hmm. If I don't understand your perception, then I can't coach you out of whatever it is that I need to coach you out of.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm telling you, no, you're wrong. Well, that's not that, how many stupid things did I fight against just because people told me no, you can't do that, and so I was like,
that's interesting. Yeah. You kind of like triggered off that. Like that was an automatic motivator. Like, whoa.
Totally. Yeah.
You said no, wait.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't do that. I can, watch, you can, but and I think that's, being able to, that's part of the empathetic nature of teaching, I think, and coaching and just being, a mentor of some sort to somebody is being able to understand that person's, until I accept that person's reality and speak to that reality, we'll never get to my reality and what I think we need to move to. I'll never be able to get you out of that. Right. If I'm just telling you you're wrong, and you've spent your whole life adapting to your life so that those things are your beliefs, your truths, and I think that helps, it helps a lot. It helped me a lot in coaching, because I stopped coaching blanket coaching and started coaching more to specific, like, I would talk for 30 minutes and I would talk to this guy and that type of person, in that 30 minutes, right. Whereas I could have talked for 10 minutes and been done with it, and it just, you have to reach out at people to where they're at, not to where, you think they should be. So.
I think that was the blessing of my high school was I experienced some fear. I love this concept, actually. I experienced some fear, and when I went there was some tools in place to get away from that. I met somebody like Rick Zapata, who I, at least outwardly, is fearless, especially with his size and the things he was doing. But just generally, he was going to do this. He was going to own businesses, and he was going to do that. And him being my best buddy was terrific. Miguel Medina, fearless guy. And then you, coming from a coaching perspective, instilled the fearlessness as well. And you know, that was powerful. That was, I felt as an adult, I have a lot of, I have a lack of fear and other people. And when I watch TV and I see these sort of riots, whatever side you may be on, and I see these people just on Fox News or CNBC or Bill Maher, like just fear, they're really, there's actually people that think that, our republic is going to crumble, like, who said it? Mike said it. Mike Avila said the greatest thing that I've heard in the last year about politics, and it's awesome coming from a military guy, of course. What's the alternative, Tom? Sure, we're going to have an insurrection, and what are we going to get at the end? I fucking went, I remember when I was editing that, I was like, motherfuck, maybe that should be I don't know if anybody would feel the same way I do about the sizzle of it, but I love that. I'm not afraid because fuck it. We're not going to we're not going to have a king. We're not going to have a dictator. It might get a little close. You know what I mean? Like, we might have anarchy. We're not going to have that either. Hey man, shit goes down, I'm calling the cops. I don't know if I hate the cops. I don't know if I trust the cops. But I'm calling those motherfuckers. You know what I mean? Fuck you. I love, and I'm willing to share anything. If we ever have a call-in show, somebody wants to call and ask me a question, I answer it. I answer it to my kids in class. Vulnerability, by definition, is a fear thing. I don't give a shit. I mean, even with Jim's video, Jim Toth, I got upset, and I thought it might happen, maybe, but I didn't. It didn't seem to matter, right? I still had to say what I had to say. So yeah, maybe we should focus. This should be somewhere in the. Can we have a no fear class? Can we spend one period a day, or can our advisory period? Can we have a something about this? Because honestly, you think about how many girls you could, how many movies are about the guy that's so afraid to ask the girl out, and I don't remember feeling that way. I know you didn't feel that way. Like, are we just peas in a pod, or is it easy to get there? How hard is it to overcome? Really?
Yeah, I think it, again, it's hard unless you have some sort of guide, something that gives you a frame of reference. Again, I have a friend of mine who's constantly said to me, you're always the mentor. Who mentors you? Who do you talk to?
Yeah.
And I said, and I have the Dave Radfords and
sure,
and that kind of deal. But
yeah.
but it was true. I mean, until you get somebody to give you a little bit more insight in a better way,
no,
then you just do the best you can, and you live in that fear.
I guess I wouldn't have got that at Glenn or Norwalk. Like me, I just think I got this one shot that changed things. It is definitely the paths, the two roads diverge in the woods. That was a pretty big deal.
Sure.
And where did my mom come from to make that commitment? Like, how did that happen? Like, what? You had no business. I had no business. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I had any business at a private school, especially when you say it like that. But Chuck, I coached a freshman team, and I love the freshmen because, I remember going into like these modern day weeks, and I'm a public school guy, and we're gonna go against this beast, right? And I remember saying, the one good thing about this is they're just used to be 8th graders, and now they're 9th graders, just like you. They only had a summer in the weight room at modern day, and we only had a summer in the weight room. Now that's gonna there's gonna be a huger gap by the time you're a senior. I'm not gonna lie, but right now this is the closest we can get to being the same guys. You play the same amount of football, you lifted the same amount of weights, and we'll see. And I remember watching the other shoe drop. Well, there it is. I guess we're not going to win this one. And it was simply a perspective thing, like you mentioned before. It was certainly, they perceived modern day to be the juggernaut, and maybe they were. I mean, they're certainly an all-star team, but that doesn't mean they can win they could win a football game. That doesn't mean you can't disrupt that. I remember that guy. Speaking of modern day, my cousin was like, man, we were. He said after they played St. Paul, They weren't the same. Like they were physically screwed up, and because of us. And now we lost the game, and I don't know if that's a victory or not. I mean, it was certainly a respectful thing to say. I
Right.
don't think they weren't certainly not the modern day that they are now, but I just remember that I was like, I looked at one of my other coaches and I go, I can't believe we just believed in the magic of modern day. Like I can't believe we gave in so easily mentally to that deal. Like this, it was going so good. You know, it was 3-0 or it was 7-0 or
Yeah.
10-7,
Yeah.
buddy. Come on,
Well,
doesn't matter.
think of all the games. Think of all the games, that you lost.
Mm,
And you go, it was that 3-play
yeah,
concept that there's 3 plays in the game that really changed the game. And you
yeah,
go, yeah, that 4th and 8 that we missed 2 tackles.
yeah,
We had them. It was done. It was over. I mean, that's the way. I mean, that's the way life is. It's a left foot instead of a right foot
hmm
step. It's a
yeah.
you took one more second to think it through, and it blasted you in the face. I mean, that's the beauty. Again, and like you said, sports gives you that
Yeah.
confidence to go instinct. Trust your instincts.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I used to say to my kids all the time is trust your instincts. If you believe what in your mind, don't talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Stay there,
Yeah.
evaluate it, and think about it if you need to, but don't talk yourself out of it because you're again afraid
Yeah.
to make that call. And that's I mean, I'm telling you, there's so much of the world that is 2 or 3 seconds either way, plus or minus, that are the difference between success and failure.
Yeah.
And to me, it's the beauty. I mean, if you're not afraid to fail,
Mm.
then that seems to be the story of success. you
Yes.
know I fucking how many times did these great leaders and these great successful men and women in the world fail before they finally succeeded. I was
And in my
watching
case,
some.
Chuck, there was no other choice. Like I didn't. There's no way that I could do that. It has to
Right.
be the other way. Like anything. It was backwards to what you're saying, but it's equally as powerful. Like I did not want to do that. There's no way. If that
Yeah.
means I got to go to college, if that means I got to go to the weight room, if that means I got to, that to me,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny.
I
That
think those guys in the NFL, those guys that grew up chasing the rabbits in the sugarcane fields in Miami, like there's no other choice. People ask me all the time, how come all these poor kids are playing in the NFL? I'm like, are you shitting me? Like, because they will fucking do whatever it takes to get to the league. I even think I personally, that's why my college career was so average, is because I knew I was never going to play NFL, and I don't think I wanted to. I didn't want to do what I had to do, whether it was take the needle or do whatever I had to do to get the call. I didn't want to do that,
Right.
and it's certainly bearing now with the CTE and guys, even people that were my contemporaries like Junior Seau and they just, I mean, to give so much of themselves. What a bargain, right? What a sell your soul at the crossroads, isn't it? I'm going
Yeah.
to play NFL and I'm going to live 10 years less than everybody else. But I'm going to have potentially generational wealth. What an incredible.
I wish I could believe that people thought like that. I don't think that guys think like that. I think that people retrospectively think like that,
Mm,
but I don't think people that are climbing that ladder. I mean, again, you were right about the drive of people who have less and want more. But we don't always see the what at what price success.
hmm
What am I going to have to pay? I want it now. I don't care what the price I'm going to have to pay
mm,
until you get there and you go, oh, wow, I can't think. And I have, these problems, these issues. Somebody said to me, I mentioned Charles Bukowski, the philosopher
sure.
and writer guy. And somebody said, you know what? He was a drunk asshole. He had some interesting things to say, but he was a fucking belligerent slob. And you go, Interesting. So, would I be willing to be the belligerent slob and have that kind of success? No, I wouldn't. Am I willing to have success after I'm dead? But
Yeah.
live like a pauper, like a lot of artists and people do.
Yeah.
You know, all the people that grind their life away. If you had to live in New York right now or Hollywood right now, and you were a musician trying to make it, you'd have to live 14 guys in a one bedroom
Yeah.
house to be able to, or a one bedroom apartment to be able to afford to live. Now, how long does that take before you go, well, I'm a pretty good musician, but I got to go work, at the car wash or something
Yeah.
to make more than I'm making as a musician. I mean, that blows my mind because success and failure are based so much on that. Like I said, plus or minus 2 seconds here, and decision 2 seconds or a small decision here or there will change the course of where you are going. And is success relative? We think
That's
people
so
are
cool.
are successful, but their lives were nothing but struggle,
Well, that's
and
what
they
Dr.
killed them.
Osmond said, right?
Yeah,
She goes, I think I'm successful. Of course, I have a nice car, I have a nice salary, but I don't have kids. I don't have, it's pretty interesting. I wasn't, that hit me between the eyes for sure.
she was fantastic too,
Yeah.
and I'm are we allowed to talk about her?
I don't know anything about it other than she got another job.
Okay.
Nothing interesting, that's for sure.
Well, if
I
you get this,
congratulated her.
yeah,
That's all.
okay.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
happen to get this far in listening to this podcast, Doc, congratulations.
yeah,
You're a superstar in our eyes, and I know that you will be fantastic back in your neighborhood and whatever that entails. So we'll look
yeah,
forward to the details, and we will announce them. But what a fantastic young lady that again
yeah.
shared that that it factor.
Hmm.
That humble beginnings and that that way of talking about being in the hammock and barefoot and not having any kind of you know I don't know if she said running water, but
Yeah.
I mean just to be in
No
that
devices,
kind
that's
of
for sure.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to see her on the street, you'd think she was nowhere near that.
Yeah.
And it's such a tribute to her and people like her. And again, getting back to the people that we've been able to have on the podcast, if you're not sure what we do here, listen to this one, and I think you'll get a little bit better idea.
Yeah.
It's that everyman thing. It's that moderate success. That of people that have just barely beat. The life hack.
Mhm.
They've gotten just good enough to be happy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what do you really want out of life? How many people lay on their deathbed and go, oh my God, how much money do I have in the bank?
Well,
No, you go, my people and my family and relationships. And, that if football and coaching has taught me one thing, the relationships are the success.
I, 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 I remember so clearly, Chuck, being confronted at the beginning of this journey by one of my friends who is in the Hollywood industry, and she listens to podcasts, and she was like, "Well, what's the?" She always said the elevator pitch, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't. Well, now I know. Now I know we're going to interview interesting people. They're going to speak to somewhat to their success, and we're going to be inspired by it, and it's going to connect the dots, and we're going to learn at least. And coming from a teacher, that's badass. And and coming from a leader like you, Chuck, it's just more tools. That's what we do. Somebody asked me the other day, I was like, well, I find people that are heroes and nobody knows about them, and they're like, really? I go, yeah. There's people everywhere. I think of Joe Pena, and I don't think I got to say this, but his father was such a badass to the community. I mean, I can explain that, but just understand this guy gave of himself selflessly, just as Joe does, and they put a monument to him at the damn park where he chewed dirt and he developed all these kids and these kids that went to St. Paul and went to El Rancho. And I can't wait. I'm sure there's going to be some day when that happens for Joe because he's following those exact footsteps. And no fault of his own, like almost by accident, it seems like. I mean, when he tells the story of how
Right.
the Pine Ridge thing starts, it's fascinating. And
Yeah.
it's so clear to me, Chuck. I like,
Yeah.
Joe, what do you mean, Joe? You were destined to do it. So, this was
And that's interesting. Yeah. That's
your
really interesting.
DNA, but no one knows Joe. except us, and except
Right.
some kids 3,000 miles or 2,000 miles away or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I
So
don't know.
if you're listening to this, Joe Pena is the Football for Life,
Right.
and he is on the podcast
Mm-hmm.
talking about Football for Life and traveling to the
Yeah.
Indian reservations in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, and New Mexico, and Northern California, and Southern California,
Yeah.
and stuff. But yeah, Tom, I think you're absolutely right. It's that's the beauty of what we're able to do here, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to be able to continue to do it, and hopefully that leads to my next little bit of information that I have to give is we're trying to work out. We've been invited to go down to Austin, Texas,
Mm.
and do a podcast, and so we're gonna see. We'll make an announcement if that comes to fruition. But we have some people that are interested in our
The road
podcast
show.
and what it brings, and yeah, we're getting ready to take the show on the road. So stay tuned for that information. That'll be coming up soon,
Yeah.
and we'll look forward to seeing what we do with that. But yeah, so it's great to get a chance to kind of see where we've come at this point and kind of define our process a little bit, and it's been if nothing else, it's been therapeutic for me,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get on and talk about things that are current and important. And I think that people go, what you guys are talking about sports, right? Well, not really.
Kinda.
You have a lot of sports guests. Well, we do have some sports
Yeah.
guests, but that's not it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more than that. Again,
Mm-hmm.
it's that life hack, thing we're talking about. Trying to find a little bit of insight into people's what the secret ingredient to their success is, and usually it's not a secret and it's not a one ingredient, but there is a kind of a general theme, and the theme is some empathy and some kindness and some humbleness, and definitely perseverance,
Yeah.
is fighting through, getting through. And I you listen to some of the people talk. We had Damian Torres on here, who was a teacher
Gee
who,
whiz.
I mean, when you hear about that story about how he grew up, how in the world does a guy like that become a teacher? How's the world guy like that? And his classes, I walked by his class the other day, and he's boisterous and loud and excited, and whatever he's talking about, I didn't stay long enough to hear, but he's just he's got so much enthusiasm for what he does, and then he's
Yeah.
out at the rock show, at night, and doing things that are fun and exciting, and I mean, man, I it's my head gets in the way of my faith a lot. I go, okay, I believe in God, and I believe in the things that that make me feel safe and
Mm-hmm.
good. And then my head talks to me about, well, if I die and there's nothing, I won't be totally shocked. I mean, I won't know it, so it won't matter. So I choose to think of heaven, and I choose to think of being a good person, and then I turn around and there's somebody screaming at me going, don't you get it? Unless you're born again, your good works don't mean shit. Your good works aren't the way to get to heaven. And I think, boy, I'll tell you what, that's where you go. Faith is such an elusive thing. I mean, my head and my soul and my heart and my, emotions constantly in flux and in battle. And the point being is that talking to all these people and talking to you on a regular basis, it gives me a little bit of grounded perspective on I'm not the only one that feels like they're losing their mind sometimes. So
Yeah, man. Good medicine for everybody. So tune in,
yep,
man.
right on.
All right. See you later.
Yep.
All right, cool. Let me just stop.